Silence in the courtroom. The judge's gavel echoed through the room, but the cries of two 8-year-old boys cut through the air like razors. Davi and Daniel Johnson rose from their seats in the front row, fists clenched, voices trembling with indignation. "My mom is not a criminal," Davi shouted, his eyes shining with held-back tears. "She works harder than anyone in this room." "You're lying about her," Daniel added, pointing directly at the prosecutor. "She never stole anything from anyone." Amanda Johnson, 32, pulled her twin sons back into their seats, her face red with shame and despair. She never imagined his life would fall apart so quickly, fired for a false accusation of theft, now facing a lawsuit that could separate her family forever. Judge Thomas Mitchell watched the scene from her bench, adjusting her glasses with hands that trembled imperceptibly. Something about those children's faces disturbed him in an inexplicable way. The boys' eyes, the shape of their stubborn chins, the way they defended their mother with fierce loyalty. "Order in the court," he repeated, but his voice came out weaker than he intended. "The children must remain silent." "They don't know how to stay quiet when they see injustice," Amanda murmured, hugging her sons. "I taught them to fight for what is right." Prosecutor Kevin Walsh smiled arrogantly. "Your Honor, as you can see, the defendant clearly cannot even control his own children. This only reinforces our argument about his unsuitability as a mother." The gallery murmured. Reporters scribbled furiously in their notebooks. The accusation was serious. Amanda had allegedly stolen $5,000 from the account of an elderly client where he worked as a home caregiver. Davi whispered to Daniel, "They're lying. Mom would never do that." "I know," Daniel replied softly. "But why does that judge keep looking at us that way?" Throughout the morning, Judge Mitchell had glanced at his children several times, a strange expression crossing his face, as if he recognized something he would rather not see. The defense attorney, a weary man named Dr. Roberto Lima, leafed through papers with nervous movements. It was a pro bono case he had taken on under pressure from the church, but he was up against a prosecution determined to make an example of her. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Walsh continued, "the evidence is clear. The defendant had full access to the victim's account. The money disappeared during the period when she was the only one providing services at the residence." Amanda clenched her teeth. The truth was quite different, but how could she prove that the elderly woman's own family had manipulated the bank records to cover up her actions? During the first recess, in the courtroom hallway, Davi tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Mommy, that judge. He looks." "Looks like what, honey?" Amanda asked, adjusting the tie Daniel had lent her. "He looks like me," Davi whispered. "Look at his eyes." Amanda felt the blood freeze in her veins. 8 years. It had been exactly 8 years since an ambitious young lawyer had disappeared from her life, leaving only a cold letter and a broken promise that he wasn't ready to be a father. That afternoon, as she watched the man who now decided his family's fate, Amanda realized that some coincidences were too cruel to be mere coincidences. And if you're wondering how a simple accusation of theft would reveal secrets buried for almost a decade, subscribe to the channel because this story of justice will show that sometimes the past comes back to settle scores in ways no one could have imagined. The accusation had destroyed more than just Amanda's job. In 3 weeks, her entire life had collapsed like a house of cards. The apartment owner, nervous about the negative publicity, had raised the rent by $300. The bank canceled his credit card. Neighbors crossed the street to avoid her, whispering as she passed. "Mommy, why didn't Mrs. Peterson say hello to us today?" Daniel asked on the way to school, noticing how the neighbor had deliberately turned her face away. "Some people believe gossip more than they believe people," Amanda replied, squeezing his son's hand. But inside, every judgmental glance was a stab in the heart. Prosecutor Walsh wasn't content with winning the case. He wanted to humiliate her publicly. On the second day of the trial, he brought in witnesses who knew Amanda only by sight, people willing to make up stories for 5 minutes of fame. The defendant always seemed desperate for money, declared Nancy Fields, a well-known neighborhood gossip. She was always asking for rides, always wearing worn-out clothes. I'm not surprised she stole. Davi stood up again, his fists clenched. She hitchhiked because our car broke down and she didn't have the money to fix it. That doesn't make her a thief. Walsh smiled coldly. Your Honor, as you can see, these children are emotionally unstable. Their mother clearly manipulates them against any authority. Judge Mitchell watched everything with growing discomfort. Every time the boys spoke, something churned in his chest. The way they defended Amanda, her fierce loyalty, the way David tilted his head when he was angry, just like he himself had done at age 8. During the recess, Amanda went to the bathroom and found Walsh waiting outside, blocking her way. You can make this easier for all of us, he said, his voice low and threatening. Plead guilty, accept 5 years probation, and I'll make sure her children go to a decent family. Amanda stared at him without blinking. A decent family? A stable white family that can give them real opportunities, Walsh continued, adjusting his tie. Let's be honest, Amanda. What future can he offer them? She's a single mother, unemployed, without a college education. They deserve better. Better than unconditional love? Amanda asked, her voice dangerously calm. Better than a mother who works 3 jobs to keep them clothed and fed? Better than someone who taught them that dignity can't be bought? Walsh laughed. Dignity doesn't pay college tuition. That night, in his small apartment, Amanda stayed up late with a laptop borrowed from the library. While the boys slept in the next room, she scoured public records, online bank histories, anything that might reveal the truth about the Hartwell family, the greedy grandchildren of Mrs. Eleanor Hartwell, the elderly woman whose money had disappeared. There was something strange about the bank deposits. Transfers made on weekends when Amanda wasn't even working. Withdrawals at distant ATMs at times when she was proven to be with the children. Mommy. David appeared at the door, rubbing his eyes. Why aren't you sleeping? Just taking care of a few things, sweetie. Go back to bed. Are you going to leave us? Asked Daniel, appearing behind his brother. Amanda closed her laptop and pulled them both onto his lap. Never. You are the reason I fight. I will never let anyone separate us. But the next morning, a new bombshell exploded. The local newspaper ran a story on the front page. Caregiver accused of theft had history of financial problems. The article detailed every overdue bill, every hardship Amanda had faced in recent years. How did they get this information? She muttered, reading about her most intimate struggles exposed to the entire city. At school, Davi came home with his uniform torn and a black eye. Billy Martinez said you're a thief, he explained, wiping his bleeding nose. I told him he was lying. Did you get into a fight? Amanda asked, cleaning the wound. I defended my family, Davi corrected, his chin lifted with stubborn pride. Daniel nodded vigorously. And he helped. No one talks trash about our mom. Amanda hugged them, tears streaming down her face. Her children were paying the price for an accusation he hadn't even committed. But at that moment, something hardened inside her. A determination that Walsh and his allies didn't yet know about, but would soon discover. That night, Judge Mitchell came home carrying the weight of 8 years of secrets. He had abandoned Amanda when she was pregnant, claiming that his political career would not survive the scandal. Now, watching his own children defend a mother he had betrayed, the irony was too cruel to ignore. Every word Walsh used against Amanda, unfit mother, negative influence, limited future, echoed the same excuses Mitchell had used to justify her own cowardice years earlier. Every word of courage that came out of the boys' mouths was a silent indictment of the man who should have been his father, but chose instead to be just another face in the system that oppressed them. And while Walsh planned his next attack and Amanda dug up buried secrets, neither of them suspected that the real secret was sitting right there on the judge's bench, wearing a robe to hide the shame of a lifetime. Amanda didn't sleep that night. While the twins rested in the next room, she remained glued to the borrowed laptop, his eyes burning under the light of the screen. The malicious newspaper report had only reinforced her certainty. Someone was leaking intimate information about her financial life. And there was only one person with access to such details. The next morning, while preparing breakfast with the last eggs in the refrigerator, Amanda made a phone call that would change everything. "Thompson and Associates Law Firm," answered a professional voice. "I need to speak to Dr. Lisa Thompson. It's about the Johnson case." 5 minutes later, Amanda was talking to the most feared lawyer in town when it came to racial discrimination cases. Lisa Thompson had grown up in the same neighborhood as Amanda, but had earned his way into Harvard and a reputation for being tough as nails. "Amanda? My goodness, it's been years. I heard about his situation on the news," Lisa said, her voice carrying a mixture of affection and indignation. "Do you really believe he was set up?" "I don't believe it, Lisa. I know it. And I have a suspicion who's behind it." Lisa paused. "I'm listening." "Brian Hartwell, Mrs. Eleanor's grandson. He had access to her bank passwords and knew exactly when I worked at the house. He always looked at me with disgust, as if I were a threat just by existing." "Interesting," Lisa murmured. "Do you have any proof?" Amanda took a deep breath. "Not yet. But I will." Meanwhile, in District Attorney Walsh's office, arrogance reached stratospheric levels. He bragged to his assistants about how he was cleaning up the city by prosecuting Amanda. "Cases like this are too easy," he laughed, adjusting his expensive tie. "Jury sees a single black mother accused of stealing from an elderly white lady. Guilty verdict guaranteed. It's almost mathematical." Her assistant hesitated. "Sir, what if she really is innocent?" Walsh looked at her with contempt. "Innocent? Look at the facts. No college education, history of financial problems, children without a father figure. The profile fits perfectly." What Walsh didn't know was that his conversation was being recorded by a private investigator hired by Lisa Thompson, a man named Marcus Rivera, an expert at exposing corruption in the judicial system. Amanda had sold her only jewelry, her graduation ring and the earrings her mother had given her, to pay for his services. It was a desperate but necessary investment. 3 days later, Marcus showed up at Amanda's door with information that made his heart race. "Brian Hartwell has an online gambling addiction that the family has been trying to hide for years," he revealed, showing her legally obtained bank statements. "In the last 6 months, he's lost over $50,000 at virtual casinos." Amanda studied the documents, a spark of hope lighting up in her eyes. "He needed his grandmother's money." "Exactly. And you were the perfect scapegoat, someone with access, visible financial needs, and whom the legal system would love to sacrifice." That evening, while the boys did their homework at the kitchen table, Amanda received an unexpected call. It was Dr. Patricia Morgan, a forensic psychologist who had been following the case. "Ms. Johnson, I need to tell you something troubling," she said, her voice low. "Judge Mitchell has been acting strangely during the hearings. He watches you in a personal way. And he watches your children too." Amanda felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" "There's something familiar about the way he reacts to the boys. As if he knows them. Do you have any previous connection to him?" Amanda closed her eyes, memories she had tried to bury coming back to the surface. Thomas Mitchell. Tom, as she called him 8 years ago, when he was just an ambitious young lawyer who had promised to marry her when the time was right. "Dr. Morgan," Amanda whispered, "I need you to investigate the judge's background. Specifically about 8 years ago. At school, Davi and Daniel faced a daily war. Other students teased them, calling her mother a thief. But instead of giving in, the twins developed a strategy of their own. They started asking uncomfortable questions about his tormentors' families. Does his dad really work at that bank, or does he just lie about his salary? David asked a bully after a bullying session. Because my mom says that honest people don't need to lie about what they do for a living. Meanwhile, Amanda discovered something disturbing in Mrs. Eleanor Hartwell's medical records. The elderly woman suffered from early dementia, something the family had hidden from the court. That meant she didn't have the legal capacity to make bank transfers on her own. Someone else had authorized the withdrawals. Lisa Thompson smiled when Amanda showed her the documents. Now we're getting somewhere. But we need more. We need something that completely destroys his credibility. Did you record anything? Lisa asked hopefully. Amanda nodded, but then paused. I didn't record it, but my phone was charging in the outlet right next to it. And I had an automatic call recording app that I used to record work instructions. Lisa leaned forward, her eyes shining. Tell me you still have that phone. Amanda smiled for the first time in weeks. It's stored at home. I never deleted anything because I was afraid of losing important work information. While Amanda finally saw a light at the end of the tunnel, Judge Mitchell faced his own demons. Every night, he came home carrying the weight of 8 years of cowardice. He had recognized Amanda the moment she walked into the courtroom, and the boys. They were impossible to ignore. That Thursday, when David had another fight at school and came home with his shirt torn, Amanda made a decision that would surprise everyone. Instead of advising him to keep his head down and avoid trouble, she knelt in front of him and said something that would change the course of everything. Son, the time has come to show this town what we're made of. But we're not going to shout about it, we're going to prove it. And when we're done, they'll remember forever that they underestimated the wrong family. Davi and Daniel exchanged glances, seeing something new in their mother's face. It was no longer just resistance or survival. It was the look of someone who had stopped defending herself and started attacking. What no one in the courtroom suspected was that the woman they were trying to break had been an architect before she was forced to take on caregiving jobs. Amanda Johnson knew exactly how to build something solid, and now she would apply that same precision to build the complete ruin of those who had tried to destroy her family. The game had changed, and the most dangerous player on the board was precisely the one everyone thought was defeated. On the morning of the final hearing, Amanda arrived at court with a briefcase she hadn't carried before. His children immediately noticed the change. She walked differently, with the posture of someone who finally held the winning cards. Lisa Thompson entered the courtroom like an elegant storm, her reputation preceding her. Walsh frowned when he saw her. Dr. Thompson? I thought the defendant couldn't afford proper representation. Apparently you've been wrong about a lot of things, Prosecutor Walsh, she replied, placing a box of evidence on the defense table. Judge Mitchell watched everything with growing tension. Something had changed in the air, an electricity that made his survival instincts scream silent alarms. Your Honor, Lisa began, the defense would like to present evidence that not only proves my client's innocence, but reveals a criminal conspiracy that goes far beyond this case. Walsh laughed nervously. Objection, Your Honor. Conspiracy theories have no place in this courtroom. Overruled, Judge Mitchell said, her curiosity overcoming protocol. Proceed, Dr. Thompson. Lisa activated a projector. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you are about to hear a recording accidentally made on my client's cell phone while she was working at the Hartwell residence. Brian Hartwell's voice filled the courtroom, crystal clear. Grandma is getting worse every day with this dementia. We need to move fast before someone finds out we're using his account. That black nanny is perfect to take the blame. Who's going to believe her against our family? The courtroom erupted. Exclamations, murmurs, the sound of chairs being dragged. Walsh turned completely pale, her briefcase trembling in his hands. That can't be admitted. Recording without consent. It's perfectly legal when done accidentally during professional activities, Lisa cut in coldly. But we have more. Marcus Rivera was called to the stand. Her investigation revealed that Brian Hartwell had lost $67,000 in online gambling over the past 6 months. Bank records showed transfers from her grandmother's account to virtual casinos, always at times when Amanda was documented to be elsewhere. What about Mr. Walsh? Lisa continued, turning to the pale prosecutor. Would you like to explain why you took this case without properly investigating it? Or should I play the recording of her conversation with Brian Hartwell 2 weeks before the complaint? Walsh jumped out of his chair. This is outrageous. Is it? Lisa played another audio clip. Walsh's unmistakable voice echoed, I guarantee she'll be convicted. A single black mother against a respected white family? The jury will do the work for us. The silence that followed was deafening. Judge Mitchell gripped his gavel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Her own words from 8 years ago, about Amanda not being suitable for his family, echoed cruelly in the recording he had just heard. Davi and Daniel looked at each other, then at the judge. Something clicked in Davi's perceptive eyes. Daniel, he whispered, that judge. Amanda noticed the revelation growing on her son's face and discreetly signaled him to be quiet. It wasn't time yet. Brian Hartwell was called to the courtroom under police escort. His arrogance had completely evaporated, replaced by unbridled panic. That's a lie. That woman is making it all up. Mr. Hartwell, Lisa said calmly, then explain how her fingerprint was found on the computer used to make the fraudulent bank transfers on weekends when my client was not working. His man collapsed in the witness stand, tears of despair replacing years of arrogant privilege. I needed the money. The debts. You don't understand the pressure. Walsh desperately tried to save the case. Your Honor, even if there are irregularities in the original charges. Irregularities. Lisa interrupted him. Mr. Walsh, you not only prosecuted an innocent woman, but you did so knowing she was innocent. That's not irregularities. That's systematic racial persecution. The jury was visibly shocked. Some members shook their heads in indignation. An elderly lady in the front row wiped away tears, looking at Amanda with admiration. Judge Mitchell rose slowly. Her career, her reputation, everything was crumbling around her. But worse than that was the growing realization that he was about to face his own demons. The court dismisses all proceedings against the defendant, he declared, his voice trembling. The charges are officially dropped. But Lisa wasn't finished. Your Honor, my client has suffered 3 months of public humiliation, loss of employment, and the threat of losing his children. We are filing suits for defamation, racial harassment, and prosecutorial negligence. Amanda stood up, hugging her children who surrounded her like little victorious warriors. For the first time in months she smiled, not a smile of relief, but of a woman who had discovered the true power she carried within her. What no one in that courtroom could have imagined was that the biggest revelation of the story was yet to come, and it would not only change the fate of a family, but completely redefine the concept of justice in that small Texas town. 6 months later, Amanda Johnson walked through the halls of the city's general hospital no longer as a visitor, but as the new supervisor of the social services department. His salary had tripled compared to his job as a caregiver, and for the first time in years, he could sleep without worrying if there would be enough food the next day. Davi and Daniel ran to hug her when she got home, their school uniforms spotless and their smiles filling the entire new apartment, a place with 3 bedrooms and a view that didn't overlook a dirty alley. Mom, we won the school math championship. Davi shouted, waving a gold trophy. And the principal said we can participate in the state competition. Daniel added, his eyes shining with pride. Amanda knelt down, hugging them both tightly. These were the same boys who 6 months earlier had faced an entire court to defend her. Now, instead of fighting injustice, they were building victories. The fate of his enemies had been very different. Kevin Walsh had lost her license to practice law after an ethics investigation exposed not only corruption in Amanda's case, but a network of manipulation that extended to dozens of other cases. Last heard, she was working as an insurance salesman in a small town, her arrogance replaced by a humility forced by circumstances. Brian Hartwell had been sentenced to 5 years in prison for fraud and aggravated theft. Her family, ashamed of the scandal, had cut him off completely from his inheritance. The news said he spent his days in jail lamenting how he had underestimated a simple caregiver. As for Judge Thomas Mitchell, her resignation had been inevitable after the revelation of her personal connection to the case. But one afternoon, 3 weeks after the trial, he appeared at Amanda's door. "I didn't come for forgiveness," he said, hat in hand, eyes downcast. "I came to bring this." He held out an envelope containing documents for a savings account for the boys. 8 years of child support I should have paid. With interest. Amanda looked at the man she had once loved, now broken by the weight of his own choices. "They don't need your money," she said calmly. "But if you want to try to be the father you never were, you'll have to start at the bottom. Like any man who abandons a family should." Thomas nodded, knowing he had lost the right to demand anything. Can I at least know their names?" "Davi and Daniel," Amanda replied. "But they will decide if they want to meet him. Not me, not a court. Them." That night, during dinner at a table that finally had enough food, Davi asked the question Amanda knew would come. "Mom, that judge, he's our father, isn't he?" Amanda took a deep breath. "Yes, he is. But being a father isn't about blood, son. It's about being there. It's about fighting for you when the whole world is against you. It's about choosing you every day, even when it's hard." Daniel tilted his head. "Does he want to meet us now?" "He does. But the decision is his." The twins looked at each other with the premature wisdom that only children forged in adversity possess. "Maybe someday," said Davi. "When we're ready." "Or when he proves he's really changed," added Daniel. Amanda smiled, knowing she had raised 2 men of character at the age of 8. A year later, when Amanda was promoted to hospital director and the twins won full scholarships to an elite private school, she finally understood that the greatest revenge against those who doubted her was not to destroy their lives. It was to build a life that he could never have imagined possible. Today, when she encounters people who underestimate her abilities, Amanda simply smiles and remembers, "The world tried to break me because it thought he was fragile. It discovered too late that she was flexible. And flexible things don't break, they adapt, grow, and win." If this story of perseverance and justice touched his heart, subscribe to the channel to discover more real stories that prove that underestimating someone can be the most costly mistake a person makes in life.